Hello and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, you won't know that I'm in the process of building a sailboat and I need to build the mast. The mast is created from this 4x8 that I'm splitting in two, and then each piece will need to be planed so that I end up with a 3.5-inch square. As you can imagine, these pieces are fairly heavy, so I need to build a stand for my planer so that the outfeed of the planer will end up exactly at the level of my table saw. I had a bunch of scraps left over from other parts of the sailboat build, so I determined to build this planer stand out of just scraps, with the exception of the caster wheels that I did buy. So after drawing out a plan on Google SketchUp, I began by breaking down these scrap materials into the pieces I needed. This OSB had a foil backing, so I used a utility knife to remove that so that the glue would stick. I used this stronger piece of 3/4 inch plywood as the bottom, since the caster wheels will be attached to this. Next I'll use these pieces of 1/2 inch plywood to make the legs. This will be the top box that supports the planer itself. So now that all the parts were assembled and ready to go, I needed to determine the height of the legs. I measured from the level of the outfeed table down to the assembly table, and I'll subtract that from the height of the legs. Off camera, I also subtracted the height of the caster wheels, and then set my stop at the miter saw station and cut all 4 legs to length. Now we'll put everything together. I used just screws here and no glue in case I need to adjust things later. I figured getting the exact height of the outfeed table of the planer matched up with the table saw would be difficult, so rather than just set the planer on the box, I decided to make an adjustable false top. I had these leftover leveling feet in my scrap bin, and I can use those to make fine adjustments to the top of the table so that I can get the level of the outfeed table just right. I'm going to use some of this 5-minute epoxy to glue in the nuts for the leveling feet so they won't spin when I adjust the screws. To keep this false top from scooting around on the box, I'm going to mark the areas for the leveling feet and then drill a small recess with a Forstner bit. Now I can get the planer set in place, and I did put a couple screws down through the base of the planer into that false top. Now we can test it and see that the wood coming out of the planer should end up landing directly on the surface of the table saw and then onto the outfeed table. I plan on having another video showing how I make the mast and the bowsprit, but here's a small clip of my setup to run these beams through the planer. As you can see, once I had the height adjusted properly, the beam ends up landing right where I wanted it to. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little side project. If you did, I hope you'll subscribe and check out the other videos on the channel.